I mean, I do need the space.
Do you? Yeah.
I do need the space, so...
You're up for a fun time now, mate.
You're so like you're close to your audience there, aren't you?
Yeah, very
It's like
intimate setting.
Like stand-up comedy in a really small club.
Yeah, it's like being at the start. You're right, yeah.
We won't heckle, so it's okay.
You can heckle me all you like.
Right. It's dangerous things to say.
That's rubbish. Valerie, that's rubbish. What are you talking about?
It is that simple.
Come around this way. Come around this way.
Take my comfy seat, isn't he?
Maybe. Oh, there's a chair. There's a white chair.
Yeah, he's taking my comfy
There he is.
Oh, great. We're on. Do my little trick and see if we can get everybody to... Look at that. Such a good trick, that. I remember when I ran Cubs and I learnt that trick. You put your hand up and they all went quiet. The only difference was it took about 35 minutes. For them, it took you about 5 seconds. So thank you, everybody. That was great. Welcome. Thanks for everybody to coming along this evening. Hope you can all hear me tonight in this amazing building. I've got my sunnies ready just in case it gets a bit bright in here. It's awesome. Quick, I'm going to read from my phone because it's the easiest way to do my speaker intros. Show of hands, first timers. There's a lot of new faces in here, I think. How many have we got? Wow. Well, no, not as many as I was thinking, but there's a few. Welcome. Nice to have you along. I was just recounting with Stephen and Suzanne, who are two of the other organisers here, Laz and Richard, not here tonight. But it's actually in June 2013, 10 years ago, when we created this group. So we're in our 10th anniversary. That's a nice way of putting it, which is pretty cool that we've managed to keep everything going for 10 years. So yeah, really awesome. And I was on organisation for this January. And just to show you how good I am, it's now the 26th of April, and I've now managed to get my first event done. So go me, well done me, yeah. Sorry about that. We're always looking for new speakers and new talks, and if we haven't got it in one of the slides, we'll put it up later on. It'll be on our website as well. It's a bit.ly address it's LEE, Tell Your Story. So we're always looking for new people to submit talks. It's a nice, hopefully a friendly space and an open community for people to submit and try out their new talks. So if you've got any, please do. Quick thank you to PPL, People's Postcode Lottery, who we are now, for the amazing pizzas. I think we all need to eat 2 each before we go, so please eat up, because I'm not taking it all home. I don't have any notes from Rishi, who is not here, so I'm assuming there is no notes on the venue. It's the usual thing. If you hear an alarm, run. There is none planned. Shout-outs. There is one from Rob, just quickly. There's an LSP, which is Lego Serious Play in Dundee, which is coming up soon. Date to be seen, but I'm sure it'll be advertised on the meetup site or something similar.
Yeah, so it's Lean Agile Dundee, which is a brand new meetup in Dundee. They've asked me to join them and do Lego Serious Play introduction with them. Potentially Lego Serious Play introduction with them, Lean Agile Dundee. Potentially May the 9th, but yes, as Duncan says, just check out the meetup website. They will have a meetup page, or they have one already, and it'll be all over LinkedIn and other places. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Anyone else, if you do have anything you want to announce or say, you're welcome to speak up and say something now, but if not, then please let me know and I can maybe say something in the interval or towards the end. So please, any shout-outs were welcome. Saf, please do.
Duncan.
Mike's coming.
Oh, Mike. Oh, wow, that's a cool mic. No, hi, I'm Saf, for those who don't know. Scott Severite and I are doing an online virtual workshop tomorrow night at Heart of Agile Scotland, which is all around exploring the power of belonging. So if you're interested in that, you'll find that on Meetup.
Very good. Thank you very much. Stephen, there's another one. You're on duty again, Valerie. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, I'm Stephen from Calba, and also one of the LEA organisers. So if anybody's looking for any Agile training or any Agile coaching, come and have a chat. We're based in Edinburgh and kind of specialise in that stuff. So just come and chat at break if you want to find anything else out. And I don't, Richie, do you have anything to say from People Postcodes Lottery?
Nothing particular, but just welcome People's Postcode Lottery. I've got to press it. No, it's for Oh, right, okay. Yeah, welcome to People's Postcode Lottery. It's really nice to see everyone here. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to listening to the talks. Thanks.
Excellent. Well, if there's any more, find me at the break. I hope whoever's shouting up there doesn't get too much of a feedback. Alan's panicking in the background for those on live stream, so we'll try and keep the noise to a minimum. Right, next, last of the notes. Introduce first speaker. Ta-da! Valerie. There we go. My work. Yes, of course. Well, yeah, if, for those that are watching online, Product Forge are very kindly live streaming this, so hello to everybody who's watching on the other side. Valerie, I shall let you do your own introduction, but she's going to give us a talk on It's Simply Not That Simple. Valerie.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm aware this is a very big space, so like, if you can just put your hand up if you can't hear me. Yeah, you okay? Good. All right. So this is my talk called It's Simply Not That Simple. This is the first time in front of a public audience. I have practiced, but it's brand new for me to share with all of you. Coming up at conferences this year in the UK as well, so this is my very first sort of, so please be kind. What you're going to hear about today is the things that go on the inside of my head. It's the best way I can find of at the moment to describe what I'm about to tell you. These are all things that I've experienced, things that I've practiced, things that I've read, but they all, in my head, amount to the same thing, and I'm going to try and join all of that up. You'll also get to see some snazzy graphics that I had fun drawing. As I was writing the talk, I started to see a pattern. It was kind of emerging for me. So what I've come up with for the moment is a 7-step cycle for dealing with complexity. I'm going to share that with you tonight. What I really want to do is just join these things together for you, and if my cycle helps you, tell me that so that I know that it's working, or if there's some other way that it might help you, then tell me that too, because I'd really love to make this content accessible to everyone. So I really need your help. Tell me afterwards, if you want, where I lost you, where I had you, where you had any aha moments, where you had any penny drops. If I tried to cover too much, because I am very aware that I tried to cover a lot, and if there's anything that you think was glaringly missing, just tell me. I really need to know these things. You can always get me on social, so you'll get me on LinkedIn, you'll get me on Twitter, you'll get me on Instagram. Agile_Valerie is where you will find me. Okay, where are we going? Oh, some questions. Audience participation. Who would disagree that you make toast by putting bread in a toaster and switching it on? Does anyone disagree with me?
I don't have a toaster.
You don't have a toaster, okay.
So I put it down.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah, that's why I added and switching it on, because somebody gave me that already. Yeah, thank you for that. Sorry? You need to get a piece of bread, yeah, absolutely. But does anyone disagree with the overall concept? I'm so pleased with the heckles already, but we're not going to get through it all if you keep heckling me. Okay, would anyone disagree? If you broke your arm on the street, you should go to the hospital to get it sorted. No one's going to disagree with me there. Excellent. No, it's not a trick question. Okay, so the reason that we didn't really disagree too much with these statements is that these things have happened before. We know how to deal with them. There is a clear connection between cause and effect. If we do something, we know what's going to happen. Unless the toaster is broken, you put a piece of bread in it, you switch it on. And you push it down, you switch it on by pushing it down. We have agreement, we have certainty that the action that we're going to take has the reaction that we're expecting it to have. That's the reason that not many of you disagreed with me. I'm going to ask you some more questions now. Who would disagree that to cure climate change, all we have to do is recycle our bottles? If we all do that, we cure climate change. Who disagrees with me? Hands up, 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 up. Yeah, there we go. Okay, next one. To beat our competitors, whoever they may be, the only thing we need to do is drop our prices. Do you disagree with me on that one? Yeah, a few less, but yes, there is some disagreement there. Now I'm going to reveal something to you. It's simply not that simple. That's why we disagree on these things. And the reason for that is there's so many potential ways forward to dealing with climate change or for dealing with how to beat our competitors. There's so many things that we could do. And the only way to understand what's going to work to help us is to do some things, interact with what we're doing and find out what happens. So you will know some things. You'll know that dropping your prices is probably going to give you a big influx, but you're not going to know what's going to happen after that. You need to poke what's going on and you need to get some information back to understand what's going on. So there are a few models out in the world that will help us understand what sort of situation we are dealing with. The first one I'm going to show you is called Cynefin. So can I have a show of hands if you know what Cynefin is? Okay, a few. Excellent. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour of Cynefin. So this is what it looks like. It was created by a guy called David Snowden. And some of you may have seen it with different words because they change the words fairly often just to confuse everybody. But the premise of it remains the same. The right-hand side over here is where we have our ordered space. So they call the two spaces over there clear and complicated. That's when we know the cause and effect. We know that when we take an action, it's going to have a reaction that we expect to happen. Clear is about things that we really know. So that's where your toaster sits. Like we know that we can make toast. The complicated is where maybe your broken arm sits. I don't know how to fix a broken arm, but someone in the world knows how to fix a broken arm. So that's more complicated because there needs more analysis into where is it broken, what sort of course of action do we need to take. So that's our complicated and clear. Over on the left-hand side, we have one called chaotic. So this is when you're in a space where there's been destabilizing action. So something has happened and you need to act right away. This is where we find things like stop the bleeding. You know, someone's bleeding out, oh my God, stop the bleeding. Or, put out the fire. There's instability. There's things that we need to do now in order to stop that getting any worse. And then finally, of the four main ones, we'll get into the middle in a second, is complex. So complex is where we find exaptive practices, and what that means is those practices evolve and emerge over time. So what we're trying to do changes as we learn more about what we're doing. And they use the words probe, sense, and respond. So you giving a little poke, seeing what's happening, sensing that, and then responding to that. That's not to say that you will stay in one of these domains the whole time. If your toaster breaks, you're going into complicated unless you know how to fix a toaster. But somebody in the world knows how to fix a toaster. The first time somebody did heart surgery, they were probably in complex because they probably kind of knew what they were doing, but not really. But now, standard procedures are in the complicated space, if that makes sense. In the middle of Cynefin, we have a space called confusion. It used to be called, I think, disorder. Now it's called confusion. So this is a space where we don't know where we are. We haven't worked it out yet. We're in confusion. We'll soon move into one of the other spaces when we work out what we're dealing with. Got it? The first time I heard this, I was so confused, but now I love it. There are other tools out there that help us figure out what sort of situation we are in. I'm going to share two more. The first one is called the Stacey matrix. Who has heard of this? Yeah, a few people have heard of this. So this one is based on agreement and certainty. So if we're close to agreement on a course of action and close to certainty about what that course of action is going to result in, then we're in a simple space. And you'll notice that the words are very similar to Cynefin. We're moving from simple, complicated, complex, and then chaos. So if that works for you, that's another way to kind of work out what you're dealing with. Okay. I wanted, yeah?
Clear instead of simple. Is that just because they came from different places?
Yeah, this one was.
It seems pretty much a one-to-one mapping.
It is different because the parameters that they're using to work it out are different. But I think Cynefin used to have the word simple in it. And I think it also used to have the word obvious in it. So there are similarities, but they were created by different people. Okay. So I want to help you understand complexity a little bit more. Hopefully that's been a start. We're going to just do a few more things that help you understand this. So I want a show of hands now. Have you ever done something and you managed to fix one thing but you broke something else? Okay, it's good. Lots of laughs there too. That's nice, thank you. Okay, now I need 6 volunteers to come here, please. Yeah, thank you, thank you. I have 3, I need 3 more. Thank you. It's nothing difficult I'm going to ask you to do. I'm not going to ask you to speak, I'm just going to ask you to do some things. Okay, thank you. All right, I want you to stand, you'll have to come along here. I want you to stand in a straight line facing this way. And I want you to stand an arm's length apart, please. Oh, we're bumping into the giraffe, but we're okay. All right. Now, what's your name at the front? Mark. Mark. Yeah, I want you to take a step forward, and I want everybody else to stay an arm's length apart. Okay? That's it. Everybody else stay an arm's length apart. Are you still an arm's length apart?
Hang on. Who am I meant to be an arm's length apart from? Him?
The man in front of you,
right,
yeah.
sorry, okay.
That's okay. There we go. Okay, we got the game. Well done. Do we think if we asked Mark to take another step forward that the same thing would happen? Maybe with less questions, but would the same thing happen? I see some nodding heads. Yeah, maybe a little bit. I couldn't hear, I'm sorry. Some more heckles. Okay, I've got another exercise for you. Come back over to this space. I'm hoping we have enough space to do this. Okay, now what I want you to do is stand equidistant from 2 other people. I don't want you to tell anybody who those other 2 people are, but exactly like this. So stop playing for a second. Just for a second. Because I don't want anybody to know who you've chosen. So I now know that you've chosen those people, and I don't want to know that. Okay, so choose 2 people completely at random. Stand equidistant from those 2 people. Ready, steady, go. Okay, we've settled. Mark, can you take a step forward, please? Everybody else keep playing.
Stand still.
Okay, I think we proved the point. Can you sit down? Thank you. Do you think in the second system, if I asked Mark to move a step forward again, we would have the same result? Maybe confusion, yes, but would we have the same shape of people? Okay. All right, so the first system that I created was a simple system. We had simple rules and everybody was linear. It was all, we knew what was going to happen. We created a simple, clear, complicated, whatever, space. The second one we created was not that. So we had something like this, and then it changed to something else. And what we created there is called a complex adaptive system. And this is what a lot of us are dealing with, well, all of us are dealing with on a daily basis, some more than others. We don't necessarily know what the connections between the things in the system are, but we know that they are there. Which means that when you move something, maybe this is climate change, maybe this here is our bottles getting recycled, and we know that by doing that, we're going to move it over here. We might have a system that looks like that, maybe. Or same system, maybe this one, we're tackling climate change and we're going to give our businesses extra rules on what they're doing to tackle climate change. And we might end up with a system that looks like that. Or maybe the same thing would make us a system that looks like that, because we don't know what's going to happen. As soon as we change something in that system, all the connections start fizzing about, things start moving around. And if we start with the same system, Mark took one step forward, the first person to react might be different the next time. So you might have ended up with a completely different system of people and a completely different shape to what they were looking at. Okay, this is a system of 6 dots, but most of our systems are not 6 dots. They are a lot more complicated, complex than that. So if we imagine just 6 dots in a system, then we go to, I don't know how many that was, but it was great fun drawing it. We really don't know what's going to happen in something that complex. And that's what a lot of us are dealing with all the time in our work, in our lives. I'm going to tell you a little story next. Excuse me. Okay. Does anyone do their supermarket shopping online, get it delivered to their house? Anyone do that? Okay, good. I'm hoping that those of you who don't do that are familiar enough with the concept that you'll understand the story. Seriously, I do hope that. I'm going to tell a story that I blogged about years and years and years ago, because my husband works for a major UK supermarket. I have to be really careful not to say the name, but he does. He is one of your friendly delivery drivers. And yeah, that's what he's done as a job for many years now. And he got a new piece of software. So they put in a new piece of routing software. And what it did, it took all of the orders and figured out which vans needed to go to which order, in what order, to make the system work. Which is fab. You know, imagine a human having to work that out. No thanks. So they created all these algorithms, and this is how the system works. And fantastic. I mean, they've solved a complicated problem. If they got the same orders the following day, it would do the same thing because the rules work, the system works. The only problem with this system was that every time my husband came home from work, he'd be like that. See that new system? Like, I went all the way to Inversnaid. Do anyone know where Inversnaid is? No, it's at the side of Loch Lomond. Sometimes he delivers out there and he's like, I went all the way out there. It took me an hour and a half to get there and I saw my colleague. Right? Like, why are they sending 2 vans to Inversnaid at the same time? I later found out that the reason they did that was because they optimized the system for individual productivity because they wanted to keep the drivers busy. No downtime. Interesting. Another talk. Not getting into that today. But that wasn't the only thing that was wrong with this system. He used to work in the centre of Glasgow. So in the centre of Glasgow, there are many football teams. I have to be careful because I did this in Glasgow and they went, what do you mean there's only 3 football stadiums in Glasgow? There are many football teams in Glasgow. And when there's a big match on, the system didn't know. So the system would give all of these routes that needed to go in and out of these high traffic areas, and the drivers are like, we can't do that, that's crazy. We're adding some complexity into this complicated problem. The other thing that the system didn't know about would be things like roadworks or big events, which were common in Glasgow. How on earth are we supposed to deliver to a street that is closed for Batman filming? What do you expect us to do about that? And these are all things that the drivers know in advance. So they could come in for their shift, and if they were allowed, they would be able to make sense of the runs, make them make sense, possibly run it through some validation software. Wouldn't that be a cool addition? And then their runs would suddenly make sense and they wouldn't end up taking people shopping back to the store. But also once they get out into the big wide world, there's so many other things that can happen that can cause this, what was a nice complicated problem, it can turn into something a lot more complex and unknown. I've got loads of notes and I haven't looked at any of them, so hopefully I've told you all the things that I need to tell you. Okay, so this story makes me wonder about every piece of software that every team I've ever worked with has put out into the world. It really does. It makes me think, that MVP that my team put out into the world, and then the company decided to stop the funding because we had a product in the world, what damage did that do? Some of us have the tools to learn about that, but a lot of us don't. We don't know. We throw it out into the world and we don't get the feedback once it's out there. So yeah, that's my husband's life. Okay, anything that involves humans interacting is generally a complex system. So you are dealing with complexity every single day in your working lives, in your home lives, in your social lives. Most things have a degree of order. So there's a degree of simple or clear or complicated, but most things also have a degree of complexity in them as well. I'm going to let you try to digest what I've just said, and I want you to have a think about where the complexity is for you in your life. It could be your, again, social life, home life, work life. Where is the complexity for you? I'm going to give you 30 seconds or so to think about this, and then you're going to have a chance to interact with each other and discuss it a little bit, just to see if we can get some of that bedded in to your brains. Okay? Okay, sorry if anyone hates uncomfortable silences. I love silence, it's one of my favorite tools. But now I'm going to ask you to chat with 1 or 2 people that are close to you, and 2 or 3 minutes, not too long, but just have a chat about what this is bringing up for you. Where do you think the complexity is in your context? Let's go.
Hello. Hi. I'm Joe. I'm a freelancer, and that thing of something I might be working on, most busy, and then the next person comes along, or I don't have to work, and then like 3 people working on it. And then maybe also kind of like redecorate a house, go on holiday, all those sort of life needs as well. And it's kind of working out. I think it's something about supermarket bags unthinkably. Like, break up to like UI, do something like why project cancelled, so I don't want to but then like I took it anyway, so it's that kind of juggling exactly or just the things that will like pay the mortgage or the energy bill that might
Isn't it lovely to be in a room full of people talking to each other again? Oh, I just love it. Okay, does anybody, I don't have a lot of time for this, but does anybody want to quickly share something that came up for them in that conversation? Yes? Oh, wait. Can you pass that back, please?
I'll give mine just because I think it's probably quite interesting. So I work for the Scottish Malt Whisky Society. So our complexity in the business is whiskey creation, and the fact that it could be seen as a mystical dark art of all the variations that can go into whiskey creation. But I'm quite new to the business, and I came in and said, I can see patterns. And they're like, no, you can't. It's a dark art. Then I'm like, no, I can really see patterns. And I'm not saying I can explain all of it because it's massively complex, but I can explain 20% of it. And yeah, that's an interesting conversation in our business right now, should I say. So yeah, super complex, but it can be picked apart with the right brain.
Great. Thank you so much. Does anybody else want to share? Yes? Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Gregor, by the way. So my complexity is I am looking for a new job, right? So, the complexity is, as you probably heard, unfortunately, a lot of agile-minded people being let go from different companies. There's a lot of competition on the market, so there's uncertainty over there. So that's the complex situation. But I am, positive and using this time to learn more and upskill and so on. Yeah, thank you.
Shameless plug, eh? But good luck in your job search. No, I'll put this back here. Okay, we've done complexity. Where are we going now? Oh yeah, so this is the first time that you have seen a very blank as yet. We will reveal more. This is my 7-step cycle to dealing with complexity. So the very first step is the very first thing at the top of the cycle. It does need a catchy name, so if anyone has any ideas, please, shout them up. Sorry? No, as much as I'm tempted, no. I promise you the content is sound. This is a work in progress, but the content is sound. But the first step is a really important one. So we have to figure out if we're dealing with complexity, because if we're not, the rest of this doesn't matter. Somebody knows the answer, so we don't need to do the rest of this. If we are dealing with complexity, and it's more often that we think that we are not when we actually are, then we need to think about all of this. Okay? Right, what's next? Oh yeah, another question. Yeah, there you go. Who in this room considers themselves to be a leader? Yeah, we have a few. We have a few not sure. Oh, it went on. I had to fix that. For me, and for Francis Briers, I think is how you pronounce that, a leader is someone who influences others to take effective action. So given that we're at an Agile meetup, and you're all here out of your own time, thank you for coming and thank you for watching at home. You are all leaders to me. Most people are leaders to me. If you can influence people to take effective action, you are a leader. You don't need to be a manager to be a leader. You can all be leaders. And when I talk about leaders in the rest of this talk, which I'm going to do quite a lot, I need you to all think about yourselves as leaders, as well as all the leaders that you yourselves follow and the people who influence you to take effective action. So I'm going to talk about how we lead through complexity. So this is the third model that I'm going to show you about how we work out if we're dealing with a complex solution, complex situation. This is by a guy called Keith Grint. He wrote a paper called Wicked Questions and Clumsy Solutions, The Role of Leadership. And his paper is the reason why I wrote this talk. If you've never read it before, I mean, I'm going to cover so little of it, but read it, it's awesome. He gets the kind of problem spaces split into 3 different areas, not the 4 that we've seen elsewhere. Excuse me. The first one he talks about are critical problems. So this can loosely be connected to our chaotic scenes that we've seen. So it could be like COVID, lockdown. We have to do something about this. Or it's a heart attack, or it's an immediate response to a train crash. That's a critical problem. He talks about tame problems. Tame problems are those which have an answer. It might not be an answer that you know, but there is somebody in the world that knows how to fix, undeniably how to fix that problem. Wicked problems are those which do not have one answer. They have lots of potential answers. Complexity. We can loosely couple these things, although they are slightly different. Okay, what he talks about in his model is the type of response that leadership needs to take in each of these situations. So if we're facing a critical problem, we need to take a command response, and that means that we need to provide an answer. So COVID, there's a pandemic, everybody stay inside. There's the answer. In chaos, that's the action. And then once we've done that, we're figuring out what we do next. When we're in a tame situation, so somebody in the world has an answer, we need to take a management response, and we need to organize process. So there needs to be some analysis done, or there is a process. You take your broken arm to the hospital, they go through a process of analysis, diagnosis, and then eventually treatment. So that's the kind of response we need to take when we're facing a tame problem. When we're facing a wicked problem, these are ones that don't have one clear answer, possibly don't have an answer at all. We need to not provide answers as leaders. We need to not organize processes as leaders. The thing we need to do is have a leadership response and ask questions. Yeah? So if we're facing complexity, let's not provide answers because we can't. Let's not organize processes because the processes to fix the problem don't exist. Let's ask questions. I will get into that. If there's a few confused looking faces out there, so let me help you understand. So when I talk about questions, that takes me to the second step in the cycle. And this one is be curious and ask questions. And that's because curiosity is one of the greatest tools that we have. What is curiosity? It's saying, that's interesting, tell me more. It's taking a genuine interest, engaging with the subject and wanting to learn. It's very different to why did you do that or when will you do that. It gives us freedom from judgment, gives us freedom from speculation, and it gives us freedom from assumptions. And what's best about it is, it's free. It does not cost you anything to be curious, instead of judgmental, instead of making assumptions, and instead of speculating. There is a problem with curiosity because it is countercultural. So we're brought up in a world that expects us and rewards us for asserting our views and providing answers quickly. So curious people are seen as troublemakers, or they're seen as people who lack competence. So who wants to be seen as somebody who lacks competence? Not me, but I do ask questions. And I do ask questions with curiosity. Which brings me on to great questions. Now, this is from a book called Beyond Sticky Notes by Kellyanne McCartcher, which Claire, sitting in the audience there, put me onto. Great book, read it. This is a book about co-design. It's about designing with others. And she says that great questions are worded so they're open-ended, non-combative, concise, and creative. They're asked with an open heart, mind, and body language, and they're phrased as invitations. So I'm curious about, help me understand, or I wonder if. And these questions are great because they're founded in a place of curiosity. It's a key to a lot of this. Okay, going back to Grint, he's the one with the wicked problems. In his paper, he says leadership is scary. He says that we often avoid leadership when it's most needed because uncertainty is uncomfortable. And as humans, we look for certainty because sometimes we get like a physiological response to uncertainty. We can feel really uncomfortable, and that can physically feel pretty awful. So we look for certainty. And we're looked at as leaders to provide answers and provide what Grint terms as an elegant solution. But asking questions doesn't give us an elegant solution. So for wicked problems, he says we need clumsy solutions. I'll come on to that in a minute. So we're facing complexity. We have figured that out. We're being curious and we're asking questions. We're on to step 3, which is diversity. So the eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed that I didn't talk about the horizontal axis. Nodding, you did notice, didn't you? I didn't talk about the horizontal axis in Grint's model. This is about the need for collaborative resolution. He talks about power. He talks about hard power and soft power. So when we're in this critical hard power command space, hard power is about enforcement. It's about physical power. We need to do something now, and we need to make people do it. When we get towards this side, he's talking about soft power. And soft power is about that ideological attraction. It's getting people together around something that they want to be around and want to help to solve. So we need more people to help us deal with that. He goes on to reference the work of a woman called Mary Douglas. And she says that we are one of 4 people. This is more of a model than fact. When I go through them, you'll probably relate to 1 or maybe 2 of the areas personally, but it can be a useful tool when we're figuring out if we're considering all angles when we're creating solutions to problems. First is a hierarchist. A hierarchist believes in rules. They believe that problems are caused by the absence of rules or the lack of enforcement of rules. That's what a hierarchist believes, and that's what they think causes a problem. The same problem, if you're an egalitarian, you believe that the problem is caused by the weakness of the collective community, which segues nicely into your talk later. We need more solidarity to solve the problem. We don't need more rules. Rules won't help us. Solidarity will help us. Community will help us. The third type is an individualist. So these are people who believe that as individuals we need to take responsibility for ourselves. So the same problem is caused by individuals not playing their part. And the final one, which I love, is a fatalist. And I didn't write this, someone else did. There is research behind it. Fatalists believe there is nothing that we can do about the problem. They have given up. Now, when I look at this, I see myself an egalitarian most of the time. I believe in community. I believe that together we can be really strong. But when I support my football team, which is Aberdeen, some of you will understand why I get into fatalist. Although we did beat Rangers the other day, which was kind of unexpected. If we can put this back to our climate change problem, a hierarchist might say, let's tighten the rules on big companies. Let's make them pay fines. Let's make them do things that are going to help this problem. That's how we're going to solve it. An egalitarian might say, let's make community gardens, let's all grow our own food, let's stop the air miles of our food coming into our lives. Individualists might say, well, we just need to recycle our bottles. Everybody needs to recycle their bottles. If they do that, it's going to help. And fatalists, I mean, I don't really need to say much, but fatalists have given up. They're not waiting for the solution. They're just kind of going, well, waiting for the end, really. So it's interesting to reflect on where you find yourself in this framework. What's talking to you right now? But do you think that if we gave a complex problem or a wicked problem to one person and they came up with a solution, that it would work? We can assume that it's going to be rooted in one of these three, because a fatalist isn't going to come up with a solution, unlikely, but we can assume that it's going to be rooted in one of those three spaces. And it's not going to go down well with folk in the other spaces if we have one person coming up with a solution to a complex problem. Because, did I write it? No, I have my notes. It's simply not that simple. I never put it on the slide. So simply not that simple. We need to work together. And in the paper, if you read it, he talks about Mary Douglas's work as she's studied that actually those three other types, the individualists, the egalitarians, and the hierarchists, when they work together, they actually balance each other out really nicely. Kind of references rock, paper, scissors as being a thing that, you know, kind of shows how the relationship works between them. Okay, this brings me on to the next thing. We're still on diversity here. There's a guy called Matthew Syed. Some of you may have read or heard of his book called Black Box Thinking. He also has a podcast called Sideways. But recently he wrote a book called Rebel Ideas, the power of thinking differently. It's just not written on my notes. So in that book, he talks about thinking correctly and accurately. So he talks about when I asked those questions at the start of the talk, you were probably thinking, what does she want me to say? And somebody even said, oh, but it feels like you want us to disagree with you. Because what we do as humans is we try to think correctly and we try to think accurately. So when we're asked a question, we go, what do they want me to say? Okay? But what if 1 + 1 equals a window? Okay, the first time I did this, people didn't get the window thing, so I'm going to explain. Okay, 1 + 1 equals. So you take the components of the sum and you draw a picture with it. Also a valid answer to the question 1 + 1 equals. But that person's thinking very differently to this person. They haven't gone for the obvious answer. They've gone for maybe the smart aleck answer, but that's okay. That's what we want. When we're trying to solve our most complex problems, we need people to not try to think correctly and accurately. We need them to think differently to each other and try and force themselves to think differently to each other. So what we have to do is take people from all over the system. We get different cognitive structures. We get different cultures. Take people from the top of the hierarchy, the bottom of the hierarchy, people that don't even, you're like, maybe they're in our system? Not sure. Let's try and bring all of those people together, because then we'll get diversity of thought, and that is super powerful. Curiosity comes into this again. We need to be curious. We need to be asking those good questions. And this is messy, clumsy, this takes a lot of time, but Grint says this is exactly what we need when we're dealing with complexity or we're dealing with wicked problems. Okay, what's next? Okay, we've figured out that we're facing complexity, we're being curious, we're asking questions, we've got a diverse group together. The next thing we need to do is build empathy and connection. You can bring a group together all you want, but if you don't get them to connect with each other, you will get absolutely nowhere. Amy Edmondson's done a huge amount of research in this space, and she talks about psychological safety. Some of you may have heard of that. Psychologically safe spaces are built on a foundation and agreement between the whole group that no one can perform perfectly in every situation. And that's especially true in complex situations. Because when we face challenges and uncertainty, we start to doubt ourselves. We start to choose the path of least resistance. So we start to withdraw, and that silence inhibits the progress that we can make. But if we can create spaces where people are willing to offer their ideas, they're offering their questions, they're offering their concerns, and they're willing to fail and learn from it, that's where the magic is. I'm also not 100% comfortable with this slide, so any other ideas on how I can visualize that, I will take. But the content is true. We need to create psychologically safe spaces. And that brings me on to this paper, where this paper came from, which is called The Dawn of System Leadership. This paper talks about system leaders, and in the paper they talk about some of the greatest leaders in the world. They talk about Mandela, they talk about the leaders behind gang crime in Boston and sorting that out. They talk about the folk who reformed the New York State juvenile justice system, which is very hard to say. But these are people who took truly difficult, wicked problems and brought people together to solve them. In the paper, they say you need 3 core capabilities to be a system leader. You need to be able to see the larger system. So you know what's going on in your own place, but what else is happening? What else is happening when you make that change? You also need to be able to foster reflection and more generative conversations, which links back a bit to what I was saying about Amy Edmondson. You need to be able to get people to actually hear each other's point of view on an emotional level, but also on a cognitive level. You need to build empathy between them, you need to make connections between them, and you need to make sure that they understand each other, like really listen, feel each other. And that comes back to psychological safety. And the third point is that they need to be able to shift the collective focus from reactive problem solving to co-creating the future. What that means is we need to stop focusing on our problems and start focusing on the opportunities that that problem gives us. Change often starts from a place of discord. You have people in a room who hate each other because they blame each other for the situation that they're in. We need to be able to bring people together in a way that helps us solve the problems instead of make them worse. Which brings me on to step 5. A common overarching goal. This is what I called it. Amy Edmondson calls it superordinate. And I love this word. I didn't know what it meant. I had to Google it. But what she means by superordinate. So a shared superordinate goal is what she says. And what she means by that is that it is so important that nobody can argue that their thing is more important. Everybody's agenda goes out the window. This is the most important thing. And in her book, Teaming, she talks about this, and she talks about when the Chilean miners got stuck. And the superordinate goal that they had was rescue the miners. So all the agendas had to go out the window. If you weren't focusing on rescuing the miners, then you weren't part of the team. And by doing this, our leaders show vulnerability. So they show that they don't know the answer. They show that they trust others to figure out the answer, and they put people in a position where they can make wild suggestions, and they can ask those stupid, simple questions that they're sitting there going, this seems like a really stupid question, I should probably know this. By showing that vulnerability and giving something that nobody can argue is more important to that group of people, it opens up that for them. It's expected in these situations that everyone will contribute because nothing is more important. Sometimes you already have a goal, but it's not getting you anywhere, so you have to pivot, you have to reframe it. And that helps you to encourage people to think a little bit differently. In a book called A Beautiful Constraint, there's a story about the Audi Le Mans racing team. If you don't know what Le Mans is, it's a race in France where the cars go around the track for 24 hours. So the car goes around for 24 hours. They stop to add fuel. They stop to change drivers. I think there's 3 drivers per team. And they literally race for 24 hours. I mean, hardcore for the people that go and watch that. But for years, Audi didn't win. And maybe they were third, I don't know. They didn't win. And for years, they're going, how do we make our car go faster? How do we make our car go faster? And every year they went back with what they thought was a faster car, and they didn't win. How do we make our car go faster? Didn't win. Every year. And then one year, somebody said, okay, we can't make our car go faster. Let's just bin it. How do we win the race when our car doesn't go faster? So what they did there was they changed the goal. Win the race, I think, hopefully we can all agree, is a much better goal than go faster. And they added what's called an enabling constraint. So they said, let's not focus on this thing. Think of something else. And what that did was it allowed them to think differently. So what they decided to do was they realized that everybody in the race was using petrol to fuel their cars. Petrol is better because it makes your car go faster. It's also less fuel efficient than the alternative, which is diesel. So what they decided to do is save the time in the pit stops. They stopped the car less, they refueled less, which meant that they were saving time. Worth a try. They're not going to win anyway. They can't make the car go faster. And that year, only car doing a diesel engine, and they won the race. It shows you the power of putting something in that enables you to think differently, but it also shows us the power of thinking differently to something that we've maybe been stuck on. Okay, we're almost there. The next step in the cycle is learn as you go. So once we've figured out we're dealing with complexity, we're curious, we're asking questions, we've brought together a diverse group of people, built empathy and connection, we've got our common overarching goal. Did we spend 3 years figuring out what we're going to do and then go and do it? Okay, I think only you laughed there, which is kind of interesting. No, we absolutely do not do that. Amy Edmondson calls this execution as learning. She says we need to do something and learn from it. We need to do something, figure out how it changes our system, figure out what works, go from there. Does that sound familiar? That's Agile, yeah. Finally getting to something that you're hopefully all familiar with. So Agile thrives in complexity. It thrives in these situations, not so much in your simple situations, but it thrives in complexity. But that's the point, it's part of a cycle. If you don't have all the things in place that go before it, then Agile can fail in an environment. And so often it does fail. We hear organizations saying, well, we tried that and it didn't work, so we're going back to the way we did it before. But have they been through all the steps in the cycle? Have they recognized that they're dealing with complexity? Maybe not. So that's what we need to do. That's a really easy step for all of you. There's one final step. So when we learn as we go, we can make great progress on a local level. And we've all seen that working in Agile teams. But I wonder how many of us come across the same blockers time and time and time again. If our leaders and managers are serious about agility, they followed the steps to now, then they need to complete the cycle. They need to ask another type of question. They need to say, great, what's next? How can we help? How can we unblock that for you? What are your impediments? How can we get them out of your way? They need to recognize that they are also part of the problem, and they are also part of the solution. It's not everybody else's problem. They are part of the system. They need to be part of the solution. And without this, there's only so much that we can change within our systems. So whether it's changing a policy, reaching out to another part of the system and building a new connection for you, or investing in some new technology, leaders have to be able to hear the answers to their questions and really hear them and play their part in fixing the problem that you're dealing with. Okay, we're almost there. I'm going to tell you another story. This is a story about the place I was working when I first discovered what Agile was properly. In a previous job I had a Kanban board, but knowing what I know now, I wouldn't call that Kanban. I worked at a digital agency. We were making digital products for lots of clients. And I was a project manager. And what I did, we did fixed scope, fixed budget. This was a while ago. What I did was I wrote the scope documents. So I was talking to the client and I was making the scope document and I was getting all their requirements and I wrote it in it. And then I passed it to the developers along with the designs that had a big tick. And they would build the product for the client. Okay, that was all great until the developers spent longer than the fixed budget on this fixed scope. They took longer than the client was hoping to build the thing. And then the client got it and they went, what's that? That's not what I asked for. That's not what I signed off. So then we had to spend loads of time doing their snags and making it better for them. And this led to unhappy clients, financial problems, strained relationships, and it was pretty bad. So what did we do? The head of development in the organization said, I want to try Agile. Now, I had experienced Agile. I was like, oh, really? And he said, no, actually, let's try Agile. And I was like, okay, as a project manager, I'm in a place where I can do this. I can help with this. So got together with some of the leaders in the organization. We started trying to figure it out. So the first thing we did was we broke our work down. So instead of sending a whole stack of pages to the developers, I gave them like 2 or 3 pages at a time. So we've got more space in between what we're doing to fit in all the snags and problems that we're dealing with. So that was good, that worked. We started to see improvement, but we were still trying to fit all of these little bits into a very, very fixed schedule. We had a traffic manager who figured out who was going to have space and when and what they were going to do, and it just wasn't working. So we did a pull system instead of a push system. And that was great because it meant that if somebody finished a piece of work, they could just see what was next and they could just take it. Really, really good. We weren't very predictable though. We were getting better, but we weren't very predictable. So we decided that we would try t-shirt sizing. So that we could figure out how long things were going to take to go through the system. And the developers could say, it's 4 o'clock, I'm going to pick a small because I know I can get it finished by the end of the day. So that made our time more effective. Then the thing that was holding us up was the design process, because although we changed all these things in the development side, we were still doing all the designs at once. So we had to change the way that we designed to fit in with how we were developing. But that was good to a point, because then the clients were like, hang on a minute, you're building something and you've only shown me 1 page. How does that work? I want my home page. I want to see what people are going to see when they land. And we're like, let's do that last. Let's do that last. And they're like, no, I don't want to do it last. So we had to change the way that we talked to our clients, which was quite challenging. One of the main problems with that was when they signed up with us, they were getting fixed scope, fixed budget, and we were selling them something that was completely different to what we were actually delivering them. So we had to change the way that we sold what we were doing. And finally, we had to change our financial systems because fixed price didn't work anymore. So we ended up with here's your fixed price, we do this, you've got tokens, buy what makes sense with the rest of your budget, come on a monthly retainer, whatever made sense. Throughout all of this, we worked together. The boss listened. We found out how to make it work. And it's only on reflection now, several years later, that I realized that we went through this. We went through it multiple times to get through all of these things. We kept coming back to the top. Are we facing complexity still? We didn't know that we were doing that, but that's exactly what we were doing. It led to better client relationships, it led to more successful products, it led to better staff retention and better financial margins. Okay, so I've given you my 7 steps cycle. Give me a better name, not Snowden, for dealing with complexity. And I've made it seem really simple, right? Guess what? You could be all over the place in this cycle. It's really not that simple, which is coming up next. It's a guide. It's meant to be there to help you figure out what you're doing and what you might be doing wrong and where you might need to go back to. Dealing with complexity is really hard. I think you are all leaders. Here you are. I think that all of our leaders need to realize that they're part of the problem and they're part of the solution. And we all just need to not face these things alone, because that's when we get into all sorts of panics and trouble. All right, I think I'm done. Yeah, all of these people have helped me so far in getting this talk to where it is today. I'd love to add your name to that list. If you have feedback for me, please give me that feedback. This has been the inside of my head, and I recently said that other people make me better. So publicly I said that. So I really do appreciate any feedback that you have to give me. Here are all my references. That is all I have to say. Thank you so much. Thank you. What are we doing now? Because I'm not 100% sure. Do we have time for questions? I wasn't sure if we would.
Questions. If anybody's got any, then let's do that. We'll leave that for a few seconds.
I mean, I'm totally happy to talk outside of this space. So just catch me on social or whatever. Yeah, sure. Oh, wait. I can try, yeah. You have to, yeah.
I think you're onto something here, was my reflection, in that, not that far back. It's got to go through them all. So a lot of the dysfunctions that some of us maybe encounter are that we dive into transformation work without first identifying the complex problem and getting agreement on that. So that, I think, is really strong. And the idea that you can move around as well. But what struck me is I need it on screen to get your words right. Yeah, the learn as you go is coming quite late. And so I had an idea, which is, I wonder if it still works, if you swapped build empathy and connection with learn as you go. So there's a sense that they can get going. You can get going early, but do identify the problem, do start asking questions, not perfection, and do build diversity in. But I think you've really got something strong there. And again, if you're saying the starting point is it complex, before you start, there's a definite strength there.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass it over there. Just to answer your point, I have been, this whole bottom section, I've been struggling with it. Like somebody said to me, well, is it a set of principles? And I was like, well, it's not really, because you have to go round. So I take your point. I have struggled with it. It's by no means a finished article, but your feedback's really valuable to me. Thank you so much.
Hi there. I just wondered if it would be good as a canvas. So, bit of paper, 7 boxes. I could imagine doodling down and thinking of each of those things and working through it. So it might be a way of presenting it in a different way, but same points on it. So.
Thank you. Valuable again. Oh, hang on. It's for the people at home. No, you just...
No, I was going to say, the gentleman said that maybe you should swap time over, but I don't see this as a linear process. I see this as we do it all at the same time, and we just mix and match it, and it doesn't need to be changed about. Yeah.
Thank you. Again, I've grappled with this. I've settled on this for now. I think all the points are okay. They're all kind of the right things to be doing. But whether it's a cycle or a set of principles or, I don't know, it's it's in progress at the moment.
The one thing that made me really worry, and just exactly what Scott just kicked off, the learn as you go, because I was almost wondering, because it's more cyclical, the learn as you go is because you keep going around and around, whether it actually needs to be its own individual station, whether it's just built in by going round and round again.
Maybe. Thank you. This is great. Any more thoughts or questions? Yes?
Kind of building on what the gentleman just said, maybe the learn as you go should be the arrows. These are your arrows, like you learn as you go and then come up with a nice step.
Yeah, that's nice, yeah. I struggled to draw that in this format. I need to change that, but thank you. That's really valuable as well. Well done. Okay, reach out to me if you have any more thoughts over the next however long. I'm always available for chatting, apart from the next 2 weeks because I'm going away on holiday. Yes! Thank you.
Great.
What's
Thank you very much, Valerie. Yeah, thank you again. Right, folks, we're a wee bit behind, so what we'll do is we'll take a 5-minute comfort break just to allow speakers to switch over, get Lynsae to get prepared. So if you need to nip away or please grab another slice of pizza or another drink, then please do that, but we'll keep it to 5 minutes if we can, just so we can move on, if that's all right. So we'll see you back about 1:45-ish.
Here while I'm doing that. Does that work? Okay, it's good sound? Perfect, thank you.
Lego. I can't wait. So.
So you should all hopefully have a Lego Muppet if you're joining in live at home. There will be the chance for taking part, but you don't get the Lego Muppets in the room. Hold them up so people can feel a little bit envious that they couldn't make it here in person. Thanks, awesome. It's going to be quite a bit of audience interaction tonight. I say that because it means I don't have to put so much effort in. I'm trying to talk up a little bit. If you can't hear me, I know there's quite a lot of background noise. If you can't hear me, just please let me know. Sorry if I'm louder. Okay. Okay. If I'm shouting, sorry for at the back there for the shoutiness. All right. So hopefully, if I move that way, there we go. That's beautiful. All right. So hello. I'm Lynsae, Tulloch. I'm really thrilled to be here tonight. This is my first in-person event, I think, ever since maybe primary 7. So, a couple of years ago, Sath, so that was fine. It's really, really nice to be here. I'm seeing a lot of new faces. That's partly because we've not met before. It's also partly because I've got really bad face blindness. So if I am in fact godmother to your children, or walk your dog every week down at Portobello and I don't recognise you, just please be really patient with me. Alrighty, so thanks also for the second slot of the night. It's always really hard to come after a really brilliant talk, so thank you, Valerie, that was brilliant as well. So thanks very much, really set the scene for us. So, what on earth is a bit of manual elastic trickery going on here? So forgive me with this, but in the last 40 minutes or so, and with the help of some furry friends, which you should all hopefully have a Lego figure for, I am going to take us through a very short journey of what on earth are we doing talking about Muppets and communities of practice in the same session. Not only that, but we're going to take a quick look at the 3 essential pillars that make up communities. And we're also going to touch on belonging. Sath, I know that you gave a shout out earlier for Heart of Scotland. We'll be talking a lot about that tonight. If that inspires you, go to the session tomorrow. But we're also here tonight going to look at the commercial value of communities of practice, something we don't talk a great deal about. We're going to talk about guest stars and finally how you measure how all that works. Now, I would like to invite you to be actively involved in this session. So if you've got a Lego Muppet character and you've not yet opened it and made it up, why not? Please do that now. Now, if you are joining from home, you can take part. Awesome. I'm seeing a Miss Piggy in the audience there. There is going to be a little bit of song and dance along the way. There's going to be a bit of interaction as well. So let's jump in Muppet styley and do this. Now, if you are, so hopefully you've opened up your Lego minifigure. This is not the Krypton factor. This should be fairly straightforward, so you should know right away who your Muppet character is. What I'd like you to do, if you don't like your Muppet character, swap, get involved, chat to your partner. And if nobody will swap with you, rock with who you've got. Now, next time you see your figure on screen, I want you to give out a big Muppet cheer. Clap, cheer. If that's too much for you, smile would be really good, okay? Let's get involved in this. Now, if you are following on at home, hello, thank you so much for joining us live. You don't have to miss out. Choose your favourite Muppet, and when you see them, make some noise, smile, tap, sing along, whatever floats your boat, wherever you're watching this from. Alrighty, what we're going to do is a little mini experiment. Okay. Hey! Thank you. Okay, next time, not a lot of love in the room for Miss Piggy and Kermit, it seems. Yes. All right, so this is a tough crowd tonight. Last one. Woo! Great. Okay. Never worked with children, animals, and Muppets. So let's talk about the Muppets in the room. And full disclosure, I am not a natural born Agilist. In fact, I am a journalist turned strategic storyteller, and I'm currently working with EY as part of the brilliant Spark EY team. We bring we use creative communications to bring clients' ambitions to life. In short, I am a poacher turned gamekeeper. But I have been utterly passionate about Agile since I was bitten by the bug a few years ago. At that time, I was working as a communication consultant, there's another lovely title for you, with NHS Scotland, supporting an audit and a refresh of their digital landscapes. And I mustn't have looked busy one afternoon because I was asked, did I want to be part of this new Agile transformation programme? Now, I had absolutely no idea what that meant. But I'm always up for a bit of a challenge, so I thought, well, why not? And in this hopefully safe space, I can share with you that it was not love at first sight for me in Agile. As a matter of fact, if we were a Tinder love story, it would have been swipe left and move on. I struggled, really struggled, to get to grips with the terminology. It was Scrum and Kanban and sprints and retros and burn up, burn down, burn the whole thing. I mean, I just thought it was a total nonsense. But you know, the hook that got me, the thing that inspired me the most was the commitment in Agile to putting people over process. And breaking down these complex problems that we've heard so brilliantly about tonight into meaningful solutions. And I realised that Agile puts people at its very heart, and that's something I had been advocating for years in engagement. So since those very early days, for me at least, I've had the absolute privilege since then leading communities of practice globally and helping people understand the transformative benefits that communities offer in learning, capabilities uplift, people retention, and you know what? Just being human in the space. So we're going to take the next 30 minutes or so, and I will speak very quickly, and discover how Kermit fits the bill as one of the most incredible community of practice mentors ever. Now, the dubious honour of this Muppet discovery actually belongs to Lockdown and this pair. You see, and not random people, these are actually my children. I didn't get these guys off Google. But we had exhausted Netflix and oh my gosh, Disney, Amazon Prime, as most of us had done in lockdown, just trying to find something to kind of keep us going and keep us interested. And we stumbled across early episodes of The Muppets. Now, while my kids were totally hooked on the sounds and the colours and the nonsense and the razzmatazz of it, I was absolutely struck by how amazing Kermit is at setting the scene, of lining up the guests and of getting out of the way. He leads from the back of the room and he always ensures that others take a bow. Now that is everything, in fact, that we strive to do in healthy, resilient and engaged communities of practice. And Kermit was doing this years before the first mention of communities of practice were ever made in 1981. You'll hear me talk tonight about COPs. I will use the term COPs interchangeably with communities of practice. So without further ado, let's have a bit of a Muppet adventure. There's going to be a lot of singing, smiling, dancing. Dancing is optional. We're a little bit tight in here. But if you're at home, get up, dance, great fun. But please take part. So in true Muppet style, it's time to play the music. It's time to light the lights. It's time to get things started. Actually, I think you probably know the rest.
It's the Muppet Show! It's time to play the music. It's time to light the light. It's time to meet the Muppet on the Muppet Show tonight.
It's time to put on makeup. It's time to dress up right. It's time to raise the curtain on the Muppet Show tonight. Why do we always call from here? I guess we'll never know. It's like a kind of torture to have to watch the show. But now let's get me started. Why don't you get me started? It's time to get things started on the most sensational, inspirational, celebrational, motivational. This is what we call the Muppet Show.
Away with that. So, when we're talking about communities of practice, and we're a wee bit warmed up now, hopefully. Again, if you see your Muppets and you want to make a noise, let's do that. Let's take a look at what makes up a good community of practice. And in simple terms, it comes from the fact that we are social beings hungry to learn. The living, breathing bodies in this room tonight will be testament to that. We gather, we live, and we survive as part of groups. Now, almost 30 years ago, psychologists Roy Boymister, I can never say that, and Mark Leary researched this need for human belonging within groups. Now, at our core, they said, is an innate desire to develop close social relationships. Now, that in turn has significant effects on both our emotional patterns and our cognitive processes. In other words, the drive that we have to belong in communities is a powerful, fundamental, and extremely pervasive motivation that informs our behaviour. Communities of practice simply take this need and frame it in a dedicated arena where people come together to share a common concern or an interest in a topic, explore solutions, and expand their learning. Now that sounds awfully easy, doesn't it? But there is a little bit of magic sauce involved in maximising the value and impact of that process. There are three things, three essential pillars that make up high-functioning communities of practice. Each of these pillars is unique, but together they form an unshakable foundation on which all strong COPs stand. Now, the first of these is domain. So community practice is not just a gathering of people that kind of like the same stuff, or friends, or connections. Instead, a COP has its own identity defined by a single shared domain of interest. In other words, something that everybody can identify together. Now, for our Muppets, that domain is light entertainment. And each member of the Muppet Show community has their own specialism within that, so such as Animal on the drums, my favourite, or there's Fozzie's jokes. But there is not an expected level of competence for them to be able to join in and take part, which when we're thinking about Fozzie and the jokes is probably a really good thing. The next of our second pillars is actually people. In pursuing the interests in their domain, community of practice members engage in joint activities and discussions. We help each other, we support each other, we turn up for each other, and we share information. All of that is people-focused. There is nothing in that which is about process or data, form filling, or CPD targets. People build relationships that enable them to learn from each other. It's people and not systems on which self-supporting communities are built. And that brings us on to our third pillar, practice. Now, community of practice isn't just a club where everybody gets together and talks about like movies or books or even people that work on the same type of projects. The key thing here is that members of communities of practice are practitioners. The clue is kind of in the title. They actively take part in developing a kind of shared repertoire of resources. Now, those could be experiences, stories, workshops, tools, ways of addressing recurring problems. People in communities of practice swarm around opportunities to share that practice. Now, if we take it back to our Muppet examples, other than Statler and Waldorf, you know the old guys that sit in the box and they complain about everything? Did anybody get, yes, awesome, awesome. Does anybody, raise your hand, if anybody remembers anybody else that was in the audience of the Muppet Show? Nobody, right? So I think what that does is that shows us that the importance of taking part. Okay, we're going to try again with the clapping. Dying a death here on stage. Nobody got any of these Muppets? Great. Alrighty. So if those are the pillars, the 3 pillars, let's take a closer look at the super glue of communities of practice, and that is belonging. Fiona Robertson is a culture and leadership expert even, and she's the author of The Rules of Belonging. Now, she argues that the human beings have a brain that is essentially a threat detection, pattern recognition machine. And what she means by that is that our brains are designed to keep us alive by keeping us safe. And we do that together because, as we know, there's safety in numbers. Now, she says that while Maslow's hierarchy of needs says that food and water and shelter are the most basic of human needs, in reality, the latest neuroscience tells us that the most basic human need is, in fact, to belong in groups. And the reason for that is really straightforward, because 70,000 years ago, if you weren't part of a group, you probably didn't have access to food and shelter and water. So if you weren't in a group, you were probably toast. Now, this drive for group belonging has all kinds of implications for cultures at work, and particularly for cops. High-functioning communities feed the hardwired need that we have for people to be part of a group, to not be the outlier, to not be on our own. To enhance that critical sense of belonging, members of communities of practice therefore must be nurtured, must feel valued. After all, nobody wants to be part of a community where they feel their voice is not heard, or they're only turning up because they've been mandated to. We are going to come back to that. But for now, let's see what Kermit says about this.
Other thing that I think every frog or person needs to be creative, and that is friends. For me, I think the very best part of creativity is collaborating with friends and colleagues. Now, admittedly, mine happen to be bears and pigs and rats and chickens and penguins. You can go with whatever works for you. But let's face it, none of us really achieves anything absolutely alone. So, as a matter of fact, just my very being here today took a lot of effort by a lot of folks. Why, at this very moment, as I speak, someone has a hand in everything I'm doing up here. No. And yes, it's true. Absolutely true. And I'll be the first to admit, it moves me. Anyhow, on collaboration, I think Ken Wilber gets right to the heart of the matter. He's created something he calls an integral approach. And here's what he says. He says, I have one major rule. Everybody is right. But more specifically, everybody has some important pieces of the truth, and all of those pieces need to be honored and included. They all need to have a place at the table. Now, that's a great way to live and work, and I know that because it's the way the Muppets have always worked. That way of thinking has taught me that as we go through life, we're sort of piling on deeper and deeper layers of consciousness, which leads to a greater capacity to take multiple perspectives. It's a little bit like the many layers of dessert that are piled on Miss Piggy's plate at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Only with this, there's a lot less carbs and a lot more nutrition. I mean, think about it for a second, everybody. Really think about this. If everybody potentially has some piece of the puzzle to offer you, doesn't it make sense to be open-minded and to have an integral approach? I think it does. And whether you're creating some artistic masterpiece or just a better way to organize your cubicle, being open to many perspectives makes whatever you're doing just more inclusive and whole. And a creative economy grows if all of us share what we know and seek out the wisdom of others. Now, the other Ken, Sir Ken Robinson, put it this way. He says, creativity prospers best under particular conditions, especially when there is a flow of ideas between people who have different sorts of expertise. I actually sort of said something similar at the end of the very first Muppet movie. The big difference was I was wearing cowboy boots.
Done a TED Talk. Alrighty, so let's take a look at the actual business value of belonging and communities of practice. In a Gallup survey last year, only 33% of UK employees asked said that they felt genuinely engaged at work. 33%. Yet we already know that the best way to retain people is making them feel valued and providing them with the opportunities for growth. These are two central tenets of good communities of practice. But when an employee doesn't feel valued at work, 76% will look for another job. And if we're looking specifically at learning investment, the 2022 Workplace Learning Report from LinkedIn found incredibly that 94% of people surveyed responded that if a company would only help them learn, they would stay longer. But for those who decide not to stay, the average cost of turnover per employee earning around about £25,000 a year is over £30,000. In more senior roles earning around £100,000 a year, the cost to business is £213,000. And I'll say again, this is cost per role. But communities of practice can help turn this tide, and particularly in environments of transformation and change. One tech and management consultancy based in the States credits communities of practice directly in saving them between $2 and $5 million and increasing revenue by more than $13 million in 1 year alone. Now, in 2021, a research collaboration between EY and the University of Oxford Saïd Business School produced the Humans at the Centre report. Now, that report identified that 67% of senior leaders have experienced at least one underperforming transformation in the last 5 years. But more positively, Humans at the Centre also illustrated that enhancing the key drivers of inspire, lead, care, empower, collaborate, and build can increase the probability of success in change programs. And in fact, when done well, these drivers can increase the likelihood of a successful outcome by 2.6 times to 73% success. And this is when it gets super, super interesting for communities, because if we match the elements of good COPs, good communities of practice, to the activity in each of these drivers, communities of practice have a natural assimilation in the top 3. Namely empowerment, collaboration, and building. So if you do nothing else in your transformation programs, if you bring in communities of practice, you will be feeding into the top 3 drivers of success. So what does all that mean? Well, if you are challenged to justify the time to organise or to attend COPs, there are several areas of value that you can highlight, including supporting capability growth that drives innovation, contributing to reduce turnover costs by increasing trust and that important sense of belonging, and significantly increasing the likelihood of successful transformations. Now, unfortunately, I don't have time to go more deeper into this survey. It's super, super interesting, but if you go to ey.com and search for Humans at the Centre, it's definitely worth some of your time to do that. Now, the origins of communities of practice actually lie in social learning theory. Anybody get Beaker? Woo, awesome. Anthropologists Jean Lave and Etienne Wenger coined the phrase when they were actually studying apprenticeships in the late 1970s. Now, they saw COPs as the kind of the learning model to refer to the community that acts as a living curriculum around the apprentice. And that allows individuals to move from the periphery of knowledge into the central point of mastery. Interestingly though, once the concept of COPs was articulated, communities of practice could be seen in different settings and sectors, even when no formal apprenticeship system existed. These same researchers now talk more about landscapes of practice and of creating different types of social learning spaces that open up new opportunities for developing capabilities and reflecting the interconnectivity of COPs. And it's incredibly important as part of learning ecosystems. COPs therefore have a responsibility to welcome everyone at all levels of understanding and learning, whether brand new and curious or very many years experienced. We can and should be levelling that playing field, either by being clear in advance from who would benefit from attending a session, what specific takeaways there might be, always making sure that language and approach and environment is as equitable and inclusive as possible. And make it safe and easy for your community to tell you when you're getting it wrong. Build in continual feedback loops to make sure you do that. And please remember, we are not attempting to create fonts of all knowledge that suck from the elixir of knowledge. That's not what we're about. The more community members we get, like hapless Beaker here, the better it is for everyone. And in fact, in 2017, a 2-year observational study by psychologists found that mutual and altruistic knowledge sharing between COP members was more likely to determine community longevity than an end-to-end directional knowledge flow. So if everybody in your community has got the same level of knowledge, you need to shake it up a little bit. Let's see how that works for Beaker. Alrighty. High-functioning communities have no hierarchy. There is no royal order of longevity of service. There is no importance of prescribed expertise. Practice within a community is dynamic and involves meaningful learning on the part of everyone, irrespective of grade or what your LinkedIn profile says. Now, in fact, Linda Hill and Kent Linebeck, in their study on the fundamental purpose of teams, found that 98% of employees rated meaningful work as important to them. It's a home goal, right? So if we can frame that desire for workplace purpose into tangible learning through COPs, we can achieve more traction and impact. And that means just simple things like, how does your community want to learn? Do they want virtual lean coffees? Do they want in-person lean coffees? Do they want coaching circles? Do they want weekly calls? Do they want to gather in person, virtually, hybrid? That's the things that you need to find out in order to make your communities have purpose to those that come. And it's not just enough to gather teams together and expect them to inherently know how to perform. We have to take a strategically planned approach, no surprise, to purpose with intent. And purpose is a really, really powerful force. Now, leadership coach Jeff Boss wrote in Forbes magazine that purpose is the allure of being pulled towards a meaningful end state rather than pushed towards something. It is captivating, purpose is energized, it's also fulfilling at the same time. And that, in fact, is everything that we want from our communities of practice. You need a strong communications and engagement strategy. when it comes to sharing the purpose of your COP. It should reflect a reliable cadence of events, it should have a cohesive tone and branding, it should identify channels of communication and how you intend to keep conversation flow happening and feedback loops in place and safe. Be utterly shameless in sharing that your community is the coolest place where all the cool kids hang out. Everyone belongs and grows there. And you have to keep the energy high. Now you'll see that in every single opener of the Muppet Show, Kermit's genuine enthusiasm and appreciation for all his guests. Let's have a wee look at this.
Look at me. Here I am. Right where I belong. I see that face coming back to me like an old familiar song. What better place could anyone be? 'Cause you're here with me. It's all I've been looking for and so much more, and now I'm here, now you're here. Nothing can go wrong 'cause I am right where I belong.
Could our friends watch the show from backstage?
No. Wait a minute. No. No, they cannot watch the show from backstage. That's it. That's what's been missing from the show. That's what we need. More frogs and dogs and bears and chickens and whatever. You're not going to watch the show. You're going to be in the show. Come on, everybody.
Look at us, here we are, right where we belong. The curtain's up and the lights are bright and they're playing our old song.
What better place could anyone be? 'Cause you're here with me.
So everyone, here we go, let's start the show.
Look at
bit short of time, so I'm going to cut a few bits out, but please connect with me afterwards if you want to know a little bit more about facilitation and guest stars. I'm very quickly going to run through why you need guest stars in your community of practice. These are the people that live to innovate and solve problems. They invent new practices, create knowledge, and define new ways of working. You are all guest stars. Be proud of that. Your guest stars need to offer visible support and mentorship across your COP, and I have 4 top tips to help shape your COP success. First of all, communities of practice need to be independent in creating their own structure, cadence, and focus. Please don't have a top-down construct and don't use a cookie-cutter COP approach. What works for one will not necessarily work for the other. Number 2, membership of communities of practice must be safeguarded at all costs as voluntary. Let your people choose to come where they are so motivated to do so. Let them select the COP that most makes their hearts sing and their minds grow. Your numbers will flex, but be brave in the moment when that happens. A community which is mandated where attendance is recorded or all push and no practice is not a COP. It's basically, it's an accident, frankly, of achieving a certain grade or working in a particular team. And while it's true that people gathering under those conditions will share a little bit, what you've done is you've weakened the practice element of your community. That will ultimately create an environment of terminal decline. 3, I implore you, and it's not just because that's my job, push back on expectations to manage COPs as a side of desk and without communications and engagement support. We have already covered the commercial value to businesses of communities of practice, so use that to leverage your COP's existence. Sing from the rooftops about your successes and embrace the opportunities to learn from what doesn't go to plan. HR, L&D, comms and change colleagues can be such incredible advocates in this space alongside you. And number 4, those stepping up as members of your community should be nurtured, celebrated, and valued in every possible way. Make it easy for them to belong by offering constant feedback loops, as we've discussed. And do remember that even your guest stars, even those that are the biggest champions for your community practice, need to take a break. Don't rely on them to do every session, but conversely, don't allow them to hog the limelight. If you have any Miss Piggies in your COP, just be really, really careful of that. Alrighty, so we have covered our 3 pillars of domain, people, and practice. You've got an incredible cadence of communications and engagement, and you've built a voluntary, safe, inclusive, happening place, right? Everybody feels like they belong, and you've got superstar guests in the spotlight, and you're celebrating every sellout crowd, and it's going brilliant. And then somebody says to you, how are we measuring your success? Now, if you're running any kind of feedback loop, this will not be unheard of for you.
That was wonderful. Bravo! I loved that. Oh, it was great. Well, it was pretty good. Well, it wasn't bad. Well, there were parts of it that weren't very good, though. It could have been a lot better. I didn't really like it. It was pretty terrible. It was bad. It was awful. It was terrible. Get him away! Hey, boo! Boo!
Now, the challenge we have in the COP space is to avoid measuring success on how...
Wonderful. Bravo!
It was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. We need to avoid measuring community success on how many turn up. A successful community of practice should never be built on presenteeism over practice. It should not be, dare I say, a vanity metric that you use as a driver of your COP's existence. Now, that said, I guarantee if you're running COPs, you'll have been asked how many people came, and you will have given a number. But please try not to do that. There are other ways that you can gauge value. Look at the type of value created. If you've got OKRs embedded in your organisation, why not include those as a measurement? What do I mean by that? So it could look something like your objective of the OKRs is that COPs will be an established route to capabilities growth as part of your transformational journey. Your key result could indicate that 70% of colleagues experience learning through at least one COP session in Q4. You can do the same with measuring staff retention and so on. Now, although it's not a predictor of growth or efficacy, you can also track ENPS of community calls and sessions. ENPS, if you don't use it, is the internal Net Promoter Score. It works on a 1 to 10 Likert scale of how likely would you be to recommend this to your friend. I don't know anybody that goes home and recommends things at work to their friends, but maybe I just have a very small circle of friends. But ENPS is something that communicators and analysts like to use. ENPS has its flaws, like a lot of measurements, but what it can do is give you a baseline for COPs in your organisation, and it can give you a direction of travel for a particular event. So if you're sent out a how likely would, how great was the session tonight, 1 to 10, then that would give some kind of a, indication of that's the type of speaker we'd like back again, or let's never have her darken the door with her Muppets, okay? So that'll kind of do that. I've seen, just to give you a benchmark in communities of practice, ENPS can be benchmarked anything between minus 2.7 to plus 35. Communities that I've had the real privilege to work with, we've seen ENPS average around about 63. And awesome, I'm going to give you this figure. 93% of colleagues told us that being part of a community helped them do their job better. But the thing with that is I have no real data to go on. I know that a snapshot in that moment told me that, but what I don't know is what real value did they get from it? How did it grow particularly? So just be really careful when you're looking at how you're measuring that you actually have as wide a look as possible. Do call on your HR and L&D teams in the space with you to do that. Now, very sadly, maybe not for you, but very sadly, our time with the Muppets is drawing to a close. And I am going to leave you with the idea that we embrace the ending. Because everything good comes to a natural end. And that is also very true of communities of practice. Communities, by their very nature, will ebb and they will flow. And some will finish. Great job. That is okay. Because even communities which fizzle out and fade away will still leave the sparks of connection, of learning, and of coming together to problem solve and to belong that remain long after the final curtain call. Now, it may surprise you to know that the Muppets only ever made 5 seasons over 15 years. Yet here we are, 42 years after the very last Muppet Show, and we're still talking about its impact. And its characters are instantly recognisable and breathing new life and experience and memories into new generations. Now, I'd certainly say that's the type of legacy that Kermit would be happy with. And as community of practice champions, it's an ambition we should all aspire to. Now, we're a little bit short of time, actually. We're 4 minutes over on my watch. If you need to leave, I won't take any offence. The fact you've sat this long, I'm taking that as a win on my Likert scale. It's a 10. But if you would like to stay for just a couple of minutes, what I would really like to invite you to do is enjoy together in this group the creative genius that is Kermit and his community in action. And this was done on the James Corden show during lockdown. It is one last chance for us to cheer for our Muppets. So, Kermie, it's over to you. Take it away.
Hey guys!
What would you do if I sang attitude? Just stand up and walk out on me. Lend me your ears and I'll sing you a song. I'll try not to sing out of key. Oh, baby, I get by with a little help from my friends. All I need is my buddy. With a little help from my friends. I say I want to get high. With a little help from my friends. Oh, yeah.
What do I do when my love is away? Does it worry you to be alone? No, no. How do I feel at the end of the day? Are you sad because you're on your own?
I tell you, I don't even say no more.
I with a little help from my friends.
Gonna get by with my friends.
I with a little help from my friends. Yeah, 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 I'm gonna try. With a little help from my friends. Keep getting higher. Do you need anybody?
I need someone to love.
Could it be anybody?
All I need is someone who knows just where I'm going, yeah. Somebody knows what I'm showing.
With a little help from my friends. Say I'm gonna make it with my friends. From my friends. Whoa, I'll keep on trying. From my friends.
I'm gonna keep on trying. Try a little help from my
Thank you for the help, friends, the Muppets. Everybody will be right back after this break.
That's it for the Muppets. Thank you very much for your time. If you want to connect at all, please do, because we're all community, right? So please do. I'm utterly passionate about communities, so if there's ways to improve this, please let me know. There will be, so please let me know. But otherwise, thank you very much. I appreciate we've run over a little bit. We're 8 minutes over. So thank you for staying the distance. And if there's any questions, I can take them, or we can take them afterwards. And please take your Muppets home. Actually, that's, yeah, take your Muppets home. Yeah.
Any questions? Lynsae, what was the company that saved a couple of million and made 30 million profit?
Do you know, I really meant to write that down.
Okay.
But what I'll do is, if you drop me a line, I will go back through my notes and I will find that. So yeah, the figures are frankly astronomical. So I will have written it down. But yeah, drop me a line and I'll come back to you on it. Yeah.
One more?
What's a good time for people to spend per week in a call? Because I can imagine that conversation with the leadership team can be quite tough, saying, okay, I want everyone to spend an hour or whatever they want in terms of corporate requirements. Is there some research as to what's a good time?
So I think my answer to that is that's kind of skirting quite close to the edges of if senior management mandate it. So you have to spend an hour a week at COP. And I think I would just genuinely push back on that. You know, if a team has deliverables and it knows what its capacity is, then build attending COPs into your capacity planning. And if you find that coming along to communities of practice are not driving value, flex that. There's no magic number, and the reason there's no magic number is because it has to be a community that inspires you, that drives you, that you're learning from. And if you find out that's not happening, that's the ebb and flow, that's the flex. So there isn't a distinct number for what's optimal. But certainly, again, if you're challenged with, well, people should go at least to 2 COPs a week for an hour each and do a lean coffee, and they have to do it over lunch because we're going to call them lunch and learn. No, actually, give people their lunch and let them learn at another point. So yeah, but if you're faced with those kind of conversations of value, really happy to share this with anybody if that would help with your conversations that you can leverage to have more investment in your communities. Okay. Yep.
Is that a wrap? Maybe it is. Well, thank you to both Lynsae and Valerie for their super talks tonight. It's been fantastic. So just another quick round of applause for both of them. Thank you very much. Don't think there's a huge amount more to say. I'm not sure, Rishi, when we're going to get chucked out, but maybe quite soon. So no rush. Okay. I heard midnight's closing. No, I didn't. Oh, no, so I think if there's anybody keen, please do, Lynsae.
So just to kind of reiterate, Saf mentioned that 6 o'clock tomorrow, Heart of Agile are running a session on belonging in communities. So if you were inspired at all by the very short part in this, go along to that session tomorrow. It's virtual, Saf, is that right? Yeah, virtual. So please do that because there's so much more that we can be doing in this space collectively. So thank you.
Excellent. Yes, please do. That's the whole point of having a group together, so you can socialise these things. Our next event for LEE will be May. I don't know who's running it. I don't know what it's about. But you will look at the meetup group and find out, I'm sure. Thank you to everybody who's come along this evening, and thank you to our hosts for giving us lots of pizza. Surprisingly, you've done an excellent job on finishing most of the pizza, so thank you for that.
Is that just for the people at home?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just for the people at home. Really tasty pizza. Yeah. And a big thank you also to Product Forge for doing our live stream tonight. So thank you very much for coming along, because I know you guys had a gig tomorrow, so I think you've managed to squeeze us in, so thank you very much for doing that. Have I missed anything? I don't think I have, but no, I'll clap for them, yes. I think... Thank you. Some of us might be staying around later on to go out. If you're wanting to have a bit of a community and go around the corner for a quick drink, you're more than welcome to stay. Not very helpful here, but I've no idea where we're going either. So,
but for the people at home, it's going to be an amazing event.
I'll stand over here with my hand up and see if anybody's keen. If you're not to worry. But thanks again for everybody. Really appreciate you all coming along, and have a great evening. And thank you, Lynsae, for just rushing us along to get to that final half-8 call. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you.